Warning. This program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions. With your host, Berzerker, this is Unshackled Fury.
From the depths of despair, hope has emerged, and a new chapter in the Activision Blizzard saga has begun. So welcome back to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions, Unshackled Fury. I'm your host, Berzerker. This is episode 102. And on today's show, we're chatting about the biggest story to hit our little Warcraft world since last July. But it's a big one. Also, going to be talking about a pretty wild piece of gossip and story development you may have seen going around this week, as well as a great video posted by the WoW team, and if I have time, maybe about a little book everyone's pissed about. We'll see how this recording goes. But first, I want to thank you. The true diehard fans, the true diehard listeners, the true diehard World of Warcraft community folk out there. It's been a tough time for World of Warcraft, Activision Blizzard, the whole sphere around it, the people, the game, the community, all of it. It's been a tough time. And it is in these times, in these moments, when you, the person listening to this now, you are one of the faithful. You are one of the true. And I want to thank you. First episode 101 on Warcraft Radio was probably one of the better episodes I've ever had come out. I do look at analytics from time to time, and you know what? It's probably one of the better episodes we've ever had. And I want to thank all of you that came out, that showed your support for Unshackled Fury, for me, for the show. Because now is the time. There's not anything new hitting yet. We're on the verge. We're on the cusp. It's right around the corner. I'm sure because I'm going to put out this episode. And just like last time, there's going to be something major that drops that week. So just be ready. Be ready. But I want to thank you folks for tuning into this, checking it out, giving it a download. Because now is the time when these are the real folks. Other people will come and go. We see numbers fluctuate. Something that you probably don't see or hear a lot about in the podcast community, but it's very real in that people are tracking their numbers. People are looking to see, am I doing better? Am I doing worse? My number's high, number's low. And right now, definitely a lull for a lot of people. Now, it's not like I've got 40,000 listeners like the Scott Johnsons of the world. I don't even have the thousands of listeners that maybe somebody else might have, but we're doing all right, and I appreciate all you folks being there. So I just wanted to kick this show off by thanking you, the listener of this show, for being there. And I promise, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. In case you didn't see, on another note, I made a guest appearance on Girls Gone WoW, episode 503, which is just, as I told them, fucking bonkers. More than 500 shows, and I'm throwing myself a huge parade because I got to 100. Meanwhile, there are 5 times that many, and it's like, it's just another Sunday. So credit to them. Had a good time chatting with the horse ladies over there on Girls Gone WoW. It was a long show. We had a lot to talk about, and it's always funny to me going into a stream environment because it's not something that I do very often. Now, with the D&D group we've got going on with Jen and the rest, I I end up on stream more often than way more often than usual, once a month now instead of once every couple of years. And it's such a different vibe being in a stream where when I record this podcast, I have notes and I have kind of a flow of what I want to do, what things I want to touch on. And I feel like within about an hour or so, I need to get in whatever I got to get in. It's just bang, 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 bang. And there's also nobody here. In fact, there's nobody even in this house right now. I've got the door open, so it's not 1,000 degrees in this room where I typically record. And I just kind of bang away and do my thing. There's no feedback, right? There's no immediate feedback. There's nobody in chat. And it's just such a different, more chill vibe to be in a stream and you're interacting with people, and it kind of catches me off guard. I don't know if you can really tell, but when you watch back on their stream, it kind of confuses me at some points. I'm like, what the fuck are they talking? Oh yeah, there's chat. There's somebody asking a question in chat. It just completely bamboozles me sometimes. So, but I had a good time talking to Raven and EJ over there. First time we've ever connected, and credit to them. They have picked up the mantle from Syl, who we had on this show last year, and who had Whispers of War, which is taking a little break right now, and we'll see whether or not she comes back. Syl, I hope you do. And to carry that on, credit to them. And they have a very strong community, and that's one of the other things that I really have to give them credit for. It's something that I guess, I don't know, just being kind of a hole in a wall show, kind of out in the outer edges of the community, seeing this like full-fledged, very active Discord and all the people and their lives and all the other bullshit going on in there, it's very different. And I gotta give them credit, because it's not something that I have the time or the patience to manage. Now, if you want to jump in the Unshackled Fury Discord and want to fire up some chit chat and tell me whatever, happy to do that. Got notifications turned on, and we do have some chat in there every once in a while. It's not super active. I don't even know if anybody's said anything there in a week or two. But feel free to check it out. Love to have you. So, moving on. This week we've got, well, the big one. The big story. Microsoft buying Blizzard. And that story broke right after I had this episode come out. So, yeah, gonna have to chat about that. But first, amongst that and other things, I want to get into the rage portion of the show, because I've got something that I've just got to get off my chest. So let's go. Let's rage. So going into this week, there's a whole litany of things going on around the community, around the World of Warcraft, Activision Blizzard, the whole thing. But as we were going through this week, there was one thing that really was just sticking in my craw, and I felt like, maybe not the biggest deal in the world, but something that this would be a good outlet for. And so when the fuck? What in the shit is that?
Open up.
Oh shit. Who is that?
You know who it is.
Zoval?
Yeah, that's right. I heard you were talking shit. Come here. Address it person.
Oh. Sure. Come on in. Take a seat. What seems to be the problem, jailer?
Well, I heard you on your last show, and you were talking about my nipples, and you said that it was boring. And you were talking about my plan. You weren't very nice about it. I didn't like it. I wanted to tell you to your face. That was me. I had a great plan. The people don't seem to like my plan.
Whoa. Easy there, champ. Are you crying?
No, I'm not crying. This really upsets me because, I did a whole lot of work and nobody seems to like what's going on and, it took like thousands of years and I had to move all of these chess pieces around the board and I just, everybody's mad and I don't like it.
Well, I think the problem is that nobody really understands the plan, right? It's a little convoluted.
It's not convoluted. It makes perfect sense.
Well, I mean, maybe to you, but you really have to try to go to a bunch of different levels to make sense of this.
Did you even see the Tellius Medieval video?
I did. I watched it.
Well, they get it. Why doesn't everybody else get it?
It requires a lot of circumstances to collide that just seem very, very unusual. So it could have been a little more straightforward. That I think that's people's main point.
Well, maybe. But why is everybody always focusing on my nipples?
I think it's just because we're not used to seeing a bare-chested villain. It's usually armored. You got your armor now, but before it was a little unusual.
I just wanted to go suns out, guns out. I mean, look at me. I'm huge. I'm ripped. I make the Shiro look like Steve Rogers before he got the super soldier serum. I'm huge. I shouldn't have shown it.
I don't have a problem with it, man.
You know what this is really all about?
What is this all about, Zoval?
I just wanted to get out so I could work on my tan.
So you could work on your tan?
Yeah. I mean, imagine you were locked away in a dungeon for millennia and never saw the sun, and you come out and you're all white and pasty, and all you want to do is just lay on the beach and work on your tan, and I've lost all my hair, and maybe grow my hair back out, and that's all. I just wanted to go to the beach, work on my tan.
Okay. All right, Zoval. Well, listen. I've got to get on with this show, and you've already taken up one of my segments, so I appreciate you doing that to come and complain about the complaining. But listen, I'm sure it'll be fine. Everybody's going to come around to it, and I'm sure that someday people are going to look back and go, that jailer, he was a great boss. Great boss.
You think so?
Oh, I totally know it. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go back to what I was doing then, and I'll see you in the raid, huh?
Yeah, I will. I'm sure I will see you in many months in the raid.
Okay. Bye for now then.
Okay, bye-bye. Get out there. Well, that was unusual. Certainly not something you see every day. So, since that took up a whole bunch of time, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into our news, because Lord knows we've got a whole bunch to talk about. So let's go. All right. Well, now that we had a visit from Zoval, the himbo. Boy, learn something new every day around here. Let's get on to the giant story, which is that Microsoft, big granddaddy of tech, is buying Activision Blizzard. They have started the deal, and they are going to eventually, and we're going to get to this, they are looking to eventually close a deal where they are going to purchase Activision Blizzard, our Activision Blizzard, the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, for $68.7 billion. Now, these numbers are going to get changed and fudged and whatever. The sale price is essentially $95 per share. So depending on your investment situation that may or may not mean something to you. But the top line is that within the next year and a half or so, assuming that the deal goes through, Activision Blizzard is now just going to be a subsidiary under Microsoft. So, big news in the gaming world. Huge news in the gaming world. The deal is expected to close sometime between July of this year and next year. Activision Blizzard games are going to be coming to the Game Pass, which I don't use, but I know a lot of you people do. There's a question about Activision Blizzard games being Xbox and PC exclusive, and Microsoft is saying that's going to honor existing Sony contracts and will not make Call of Duty exclusive right away. But it is likely that some of Activision Blizzard's future games will not come to PlayStation. Bobby Kotick. Here's a big one here. Bobby Kotick is unlikely to stay as anything once the deal goes through. Now, is that a good deal? Eventually, yes. Eventually, yes. Bobby's going to stay on, it sounds like, until the deal is done. But at long last, it does look like we will be rid of Bobby Kotick. Out of Activision Blizzard, probably not out of our lives, but it is very likely that he will be gone. They're being a little wishy-washy about it in the way that they are. But it is sounding very likely. Wall Street Journal, I think, was the first that I saw report that once the deal is closed, he's going to get the biggest golden parachute you've probably ever heard of, and he's going to bounce. Does that suck? It sucks that he gets paid. It sucks that he gets paid on the way out the door, and there's not a whole lot that we can do about that. But I do think that with everything that went on, all of the commotion about the harassment, the lawsuits, the bad actors, the inability of the board to do anything about Bobby Kotick or move forward, it put the company in a position where they were able to be bought, where the finances were right and a big enough fish came along and they're going to gobble them up. So, in a way, I do think that what the community has done to raise the profile of the plight of the workers at Activision Blizzard, the harassment, the discrimination, everything that's gone on, I think all of that went towards what eventually put Activision Blizzard in the sights of somebody like Microsoft. Apparently Facebook was also potentially in the running somewhere, and oh my God, am I glad that they're not involved, because that would have sucked. But at long last, it does look like Bobby Kotick will be out as CEO, and the board that has been around all of this time, many members for many, many years, they will also be gone, because Microsoft has their own board, and there's not going to be two. I can tell you that right now. They're not going to give authority or delegate to anyone. Looking around the community, it does seem that there is cautious optimism, I would say. It's cautious optimism. It's an enormous purchase. So let's start with that. It's $68.7 billion. I mean, it's all funny money. It's hard to even think about what that actually looks like on paper, you know, in real terms, like billions of dollars. It's hard to imagine. But it is an enormous deal. And it does raise some red flags in terms of whether or not this is a deal that will actually be approved, because that's part of this as well, is that there are entities that have to approve this type of a purchase to ensure that there isn't some sort of antitrust situation going on. You can't have a monopoly, right? There has to be a certain amount of fair market situation going on here. So it is possible that this deal could be blocked. So don't quite pop the champagne just yet. And now, is it likely? I would say it is likely. I would say it is likely that this deal is going to go through. But with a and I'm going to be real careful about this, with a federal administration that is looking to crack down on big tech and big tech mergers, it's possible that the Justice Department, the Antitrust Division, may have some, I don't know, may have some concern, but with folks that I've talked to just personally that I know, red flags, yes, but people seem to think that eventually it will go through, and that's why it's not a done deal right away, because it's so big. It has to be reviewed by multiple entities and then given a seal of approval. So it could be some time, and that's why, they said July of next year is the deadline, because it's going to take that long to review all the materials. But overall, it does seem like there is a cautious optimism. I know ABK Workers Alliance, they were cautious about it. They, again, remain committed. As I said, we remain committed to fighting for workplace improvements and the rights of our employees, regardless of who is financially in control of the company. So while it is a good thing that the bad actors we've been trying to oust will likely be ousted by this deal, it doesn't just wash away all of the problems, because the people that are still at the company are still at the company. You still have people that were misbehaving at the company, and you still have to address that. So work to be done, but cautious optimism. I think Bobby leaving, the board leaving, that's a big thing. Of course, when they put out the announcements, Microsoft put out their announcement, Bobby Kotick put out his announcement, and they were on TV, and they tried to spin it a bunch of different ways. But I think at the end of the day, because of all of the problems that Activision Blizzard had, including because of Bobby Kotick himself, it made them susceptible to a buyout. Now, I don't think that there's some 4D chess going on here, Zoval style, where you had, I'm going to tank this so I can get a buyout, and because it's possible that Bobby could walk away with like $600 million because of this. So don't hurt yourself hearing that. It's painful, I know. But all in all, I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move for us. Microsoft isn't perfect, and you may have heard about this, or you'll hear about this at some point. They too have had their own harassment scandals, where hundreds of cases of harassment were reported last decade, and they also failed to properly address some of these situations. So as we've talked about several times on this show, you kind of have to pick your poison, to be honest. It's two bad choices. Which one is the worst choice? Microsoft or Activision Blizzard? I think we're willing to roll the dice on Microsoft. They're an enormous company. The culture that Microsoft brings will be interesting. Did see on Twitter a whole bunch of very positive outreach by current Microsoft game devs, reaching out to who will be their new counterparts, their Blizz counterparts, offering assistance and support, and there were other resources that were being shared. And so initially, there's a lot of positivity being bred between the two. And that, I think, is a good thing. There are going to be questions of layoffs, which is a bad thing. It was a whole reason I started looking at the finances in the first place, was because of the big layoffs that happened a few years ago. And when you have a merger of this size, there are going to be questions of redundancy and team structure and those sorts of things, where folks will come in. Now, whether they hire like the Bobs in Office Space, or whether it's somebody else, efficiency experts, they're going to come in and take a look and say, well, do we need these 100 positions that do XYZ thing, or do we need to call that down to 75 or 50 or whatever? That is a real possibility, and that would be terrible to lose a job because of something that on its face kind of looks like a good thing. With the money being thrown around, if they did get laid off, you would hope that an enormous severance package would be part of that, to say, hey, here's 6 months worth of pay at least, and benefits, and, Godspeed with you. And those are the sorts of things that are going to get figured out over the next year and a half. And it could be a little bit of a tense time. So for myself, I've been through a situation like this where my first job out of college, I worked for a very large financial company who then purchased another very large financial company. And I had to interview, even though my company bought out the other company, I had to interview for my own job at 23 years old. I had to interview for my own job and basically convince these tech bro dudes that they should keep me on. Now, they probably kept me on because I was the newest guy and cost them the least because they wiped out the whole management structure of the our own company, of the company that bought the other ones. They wiped out our own people, which was just bonkers to me. So I've been on the inside of something like this, and I am cautiously optimistic as a whole, but I do worry about some of the individuals who may get affected by this in a negative way. So it's, nothing's perfect, honestly. It's kind of like seeing the end of Bobby Kotick's tenure. What do we want? For him to be gone. What do we also want? Maybe for him to be in jail, not making a bunch of money off of this. But unfortunately, oftentimes, that's just not the way the world works. And that's shitty, and you fight to do what you can to change that tide. But believe me, as somebody who's seen the things that I've seen in my own personal life and work life, oftentimes the things that happen are the things that shouldn't, and the things that should don't. And that sucks, and it's hard, and you have to swallow that down and just take it. But you hope at the end of the day you can get to a place where you can move forward. And I think that that's where Activision Blizzard will be when all the dust is settled. Kotick will be gone. The board will be gone. People will continue the pressure in the right places for the change that is needed. And hopefully we'll get back to the fucking games, because that's what this is supposed to be about. We never used to talk about personnel. We never used to talk about, it was about people leaving, but it wasn't about this kind of stuff. The focus has been on the shit and the trash, human or otherwise. And now maybe, eventually, we can get back to the games. Whether we like them, whether we don't, whether they're good, whether they're crap. Maybe Blizzard can get back to the it's ready when it's ready. I don't know. We always pointed the finger at Activision saying, well, they fucked up Blizzard because they had to get so many games out in such and such a time, and it was all very dependent on game releases related to share prices, and that was all very bad for the developers. With something as large as Microsoft, Blizzard becomes a much smaller piece of the pie. And I did see a visualization out there, and I wish I'd have saved it so I could put it out on Twitter. And I'll see if I can find it. But it essentially showed, sort of in a graphic form, the size of Blizzard or Activision Blizzard in terms of the entire portfolio of Microsoft. And it will be a large portion of it, but it won't be relatively as large as, let's say, Blizzard was to Activision when it was just them and King. Maybe that takes the pressure off. Maybe that gives them some more latitude to say, hey, let's do StarCraft 3. Fuck it. That would be great. I know there's people out there that are like, oh, WoW 2. I don't think you're going to get a WoW 2. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth right now. You're not going to get a WoW 2. Maybe you'll get something else. I don't know. But hopefully it'll give them that kind of latitude. And we'll see. And we'll find out, because if it's one thing that has changed a lot as well over this time, is we used to never hear things, not never, rarely. It was very rare to hear Blizzard employees speak about a lot of things. But now the culture has shifted, and employees are speaking more than they ever have, and it'll allow us to keep better tabs as a community on whether or not promises of change are actually coming to fruition. And that's what's important. Is at the end of the day, making sure that the humans involved are getting what they need, and then us as the consumer are getting a great product. Because let's be honest, as a WoW player, it's probably been the toughest time we've ever had. And hopefully 9.2 is right around the corner. I'm going to talk about a developer update here in a minute. And 10.0, I don't know. I don't think we're going to get it this year. I think it's going to be next year. But we'll see. And hopefully this Microsoft purchase will get us in the right direction, and Lord knows we'll keep tabs here on Unshackled Fury. So good or bad, come what may, we'll keep an eye on it. But that's the big story right now. Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion, and maybe, just maybe, we are finally rid of Bobby Kotick. So let's talk about some developer updates when it comes to 9.2. The PTR has been open for a little bit. Just this past Friday, in fact, there was an opportunity to play with the Blues, and it sounded like there was some positive feedback coming from that. They got to test a bunch of stuff. One of the issues that came out of PTR testing recently, though, was in relation to tier sets and gear that was dropping, and kind of a change in philosophy, or I guess a reversal in philosophy, or maybe going a nostalgic turn back in philosophy, because tier gear, we've talked about, is back in 9.2. And this time it's going to be a little bit different, because what they've been talking about is specific pieces of gear dropping from certain bosses. But now they have decided that they're going to go back to tokens. Remember those? Remember tokens? You get a little token, you have to go to a vendor, turn stuff in. So there's a pretty good post that was put up by a senior game designer over at Blizzard about what they're changing and why they're changing the loot system, the tier loot system, in the next raid. And they kind of break it down into, it looks like, a couple of different buckets. One being that there will now be tokens that drop off of the bosses, which you will be able to turn in for gear. The other is that they're going to create a kind of a unique system in which tier gear can be crafted. And I think that the big complaint about this is going to be is that they're calling what they said is the creation catalyst, which will allow you to craft tier gear. It will not be available until 8 weeks. Currently, 8 weeks after the raid goes live or the patch drops. So that's 2 full months where it's just going to be grinding gear out traditionally, the way you always did it, in a raid, getting token drops, turning them in, getting your tier gear. They're trying to figure out a way in which the dispersion of the tier tokens that get dropped help groups more evenly. And so they go into a pretty good discussion about how when there's specific pieces of gear that drop, that only really benefits a small group of players. Whereas if you drop tokens, and let's say you've got, however big a size raid you've got, those tokens can be spread across more players. And so you're going to be able to build up your roster's tier sets quicker, I think. With the creation catalyst, that will allow you to supplement perhaps, or to gear up your ults at that point with tier gear, because you know how it is. All of us know. Any of us that have raided, we all know there was that one piece, and you either moved on from the bosses, like you saved lockouts, and so you're skipping a bunch of bosses that came before, and maybe you needed that one piece of tier gear, or that one whatever, and you can't get it. Well, this will be a way, this creation catalyst will be a way for you to be able to craft that piece. And it goes into detail about there's going to be a cooldown, which everyone will have. This is kind of an interesting thing. The cooldown for this will be shared across everybody. It's a global cooldown. So everybody will have it at the same time. It's not an individual cooldown. They're calling it a global charge that accumulates. So let's say you get whatever, one a week or whatever the thing is. You can save those up for your alts. And so you can bang, 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 get them all out at the same time while everybody else has to work. So it's going to be interesting, because I have a feeling it's going to be like, all right, everybody go. And they're going to, all right, it's craft time. And it's just going to go through the tier. But 8 weeks, I feel like, is going to be a complaint for many folks to have to wait that long to get the pieces. But it does feel fair to me. With the race for world first that's going to be going on, and I saw another conversation about that online recently about how it's pay to win, which I don't necessarily subscribe to, because skill is skill, and you could give me all the fucking best gear, and you could give the good people all the shit gear. I guarantee you they will still do better than me. That's just gear will help, but skill is where you get it. And for them to take this sort of a track, it's an interesting try. You know, domination shards, not that popular. But they tried it. Something different. Give them credit. With this, a creation catalyst with a global charge that everybody's got the same number at the same time. It's an interesting experiment. And I'm curious to see how that goes. But big news coming out of it, though, it's going to be tokens now. Tier tokens coming out of Sepulchre of the first one. So hopefully you'll be able to get your tier sets and get jamming as you move through that raid, because it's going to be a big raid. It's going to be out for a long time. It's going to be a long patch, folks. So don't feel like you have to be in a big rush. 8 weeks, it may feel like a long time when you're on the front end of it, but I guarantee you 8 weeks isn't going to feel like shit when we're 6 months into this patch. And like, yeah, you remember that? I forgot about it. It was so long ago. So if you're panicked about that, don't worry. It's a long patch. It's going to be okay. It'll be fine. One of the other pieces that they updated, which I assume will be universally liked, is that they have made a decision to change how flying is awarded in patch 9.2. So they have added the achievement Unlocking the Secrets, and that is going to be how you learn flying in Zereth Mortis. And the developer note here says, after listening to player feedback regarding access to Zereth Mortis flying being too time-consuming, we've made the change to now unlock flying more easily by completing a series of achievements around Zereth Mortis instead of researching Cipher of the First Ones. So you may have seen a lot of conversation about the Cipher of the First Ones and how time-consuming it may be to gather all of the materials you need to unlock something, and then there's unlock time, and so it almost seems like there's, double time punishment in order to unlock something. And according to my sources, this achievement, Unlocking the Secrets, you're looking about a 2-week run. That's it. I think 2 weeks to unlock flying is just fine. Now, will I get it in 2 weeks? I don't know. We'll see. I do like a good goal like that, so I may blast through there to try to get that sucker. But I know there are folks that think, well, we should always have flying. We don't need to keep unlocking it, and that is a fair complaint. I mean, dear Jesus, we have been to hell and back quite literally, and we still have to unlock flying everywhere we go. And I understand that can be a little bit tedious, but I understand from a game design concept at the very least that it's giving you a reward to work for, and I don't have a problem with that. It's an MMO. There's always going to be a grind. There's always going to be a bit of tedium, and you're in a new place, right? So think about how you need to be able to figure out how to balance in this strange new environment, and your mounts need time to acclimate. I mean, shit, you can make up any reason that you want to, but that's the one that comes to mind. It's just you and your crew just need time to acclimate to this new place, and then you can fly. All right, so it makes sense to me, sort of in that way. But it's at least better at 2 weeks than Christ when we were in other places, and they didn't even know. You remember when they were humming and hawing whether or not we were even going to fly? I think it was in Warlords or one of the other past expansions. They didn't even know. There was debate as to whether or not we were ever going to fly. They were not straightforward about it. Now, whether they knew from the beginning, we don't know. But that was not a good time in the community. People were pissed. People like flying, and I get it, and I've said it before. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting us, the player, to travel just via ground mount, to see the place where we're going and to learn about what we're doing and to absorb the story, the characters, the setting, the whole deal. Because if all you do is fly around and turn everything into ones and zeros about, I gotta go here, do this thing, gotta go here, do this thing, and it's just bing, 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 right out of the gate, that's just not fulfilling. I mean, shit, maybe it is to you, but I don't think that's the intention, and to some degree, I want to follow what they're trying to get us to. The thing about Warcraft is people can make the game whatever they want it to be. And that's part of the reason why it's so fucking great. But I do want to at least try to do what the developers intended, at least, one go around. And then we can take it from there and make it all kinds of crazy things. But flying, 2 weeks. Good news. Huzzah. Raise the banner. Fly a flag. Shoot some fireworks. Do whatever. It's a good time. Otherwise, the folks at World of Warcraft did put up a post recently, just another developer update post where they link a lot of these forum posts, ones that I've talked about, and a few others. One of them being about the Belt of Unity and Legendary updates. So if you want to see what's going on with that discussion, there's a post about that. Some other discussion about raid weapons and a few other things, as well as some other updates about WoW Classic and others. So encourage you to check that out as always. World of Warcraft news and development updates. Just a good little roundup spot for you to find what you need. And speaking of development, there was quite possibly one of the more interesting and illuminating stories this past week, going into the saga of Sylvanas' story and the nexus with the fallen asshole known as Alex Afrasiabi. Remember Alex Afrasiabi? Abrosiabi? He was one of the franchise and story development dudes. He used to get up there, and he was the one that basically said we were going to kill off all our leaders, and I'm pretty sure he was responsible for killing Varian, which I will add to the list of giant shit that this guy should never be forgiven for. But there was an interesting comment that went out on Twitter by Berzerker, where he had said, and I quote, "Wild that Afrasiabi decided to have the last laugh with Sylvanas, pretty much destroying her arc and surely leaving remaining writers in a strange position. Turns out our what the fuck this is dog shit reaction to her and BFA was well warranted." Well, from there, what was kind of like an interesting shot in the dark. Like, wow, that's kind of a wild thing to say just like for no reason. Well, then that was responded to by Taliesin and Avitel. And it was also responded to by Michelle Morrow, who voices Sylvanas. And it was responded to by Scott Johnson, who pretty much confirmed that her storyline was sacrificed because Afrasiabi really didn't know what he was doing and just threw shit at the wall. And before there was an opportunity to really see it through, he was out. So there's a really great video by Taliesin and Avitel where Taliesin goes into a pretty good discussion about how they, as high level... Now these are the real influencers, folks. This is how you know. Nobody tells me inside shit. I don't know anybody from Blizzard. But these folks do. Berzerker, Scott Johnson, Taliesin and Avitel, obviously voice actors, like they have inside scoops on stuff that oftentimes they're not saying anything about because either they were told something in confidence, maybe under NDA, depending on the circumstances, or they're just trying to be good humans and not blowing up the spot of people telling them inside dirt. But it did sound very much like what happened was Afrasiabi had this idea of, wouldn't it be a crazy moment if Sylvanas burned down Teldrassil and had this major turn? Wouldn't that be big? Wouldn't that be something? But then never really thought about what happened after that. They also talked about in this video, Taliesin talked about how, if you remember a couple of years ago, Afrasiabi gave this interview where he just offhandedly mentioned that Sylvanas was responsible for the Wrathgate. And at the time, those of us who followed it, and we talked about it on this show, were like, holy shit, really? We thought that was the other guy that was responsible. And he dropped this bomb out of nowhere that Sylvanas was responsible for the Wrathgate all along. We were like, that is so out of context. What the fuck? Well, apparently Blizzard is deciding to bury that comment and is not really acknowledging that as canon. And further in the discussion, and it's a great video. I do recommend that you watch it. It's called Afrasiabi's Sylvanas Sabotage: The Truth. And Taliesin talks about how they came to be in possession of certain knowledge about this storyline, about Afrasiabi's involvement. about some of the internal workings at Blizzard, and essentially how after this bomb got dropped of Sylvanas making this turn, the rest of the team was kind of left holding the bag, trying to figure out how to work that out. And so a lot of us have played through that era, just could not make heads or tails of what in the fuck this story was supposed to be. Was this a redemption arc? What was Sylvanas doing? Like, you've heard it many, many times on this show where I said there's no way that Sylvanas could come back from that. You cannot tell me that this was some, oh, she had an old god in her ear shit. I just don't buy it. The problem is they didn't really have a solution when this was the plan, when they decided this is what we're going to do. And so all of the folks that came after Afrasiabi in the years since had to figure out how to make that work. And now coming into the present, you have Steve Denuser, who is essentially the guy in Afrasiabi's old spot, it feels like. And he and his team are the ones that are buttoning up what is left of that story arc in this expansion, in Shadowlands. And when they talk about, and we talked about this on a show recently, is how the way that Steve Denuser and the others are talking about this last patch of Shadowlands is that it is essentially the end of what came before. And it feels very much like, and Taliesin talks about this in his video, about this is buttoning up that era, right? The OGs that came through, whatever you think of them, that Shadowlands is essentially the end of that hold that those folks had and the major story beats that those people were responsible for. Going forward in 10.0, whether it's Dragon Isles or Light and Void or fucking Hello Kitty Island Adventure, this is now Denuser's team and their vision and their storyline, and it's probably, I'm going to make a guess here, it's probably going to be more cohesive than what came before. At least we hope, because that has been one of the biggest criticisms of this story. And you know, listen, I went along because I can try to make it work as much as possible, and I have trust and faith in the people that are there that are like, okay, we got this. But it did feel disjointed. Went from BFA to Shadowlands and what was going to happen. And it turns out, after all, that there was a problem. The call was coming from inside the house. The problem was internal, and it played out in a weird public way. So, with 9.2, the end of Shadowlands, I think we are going to be saying goodbye to some things, and we're going to be opening up some doors to something new. And I think we're all ready for that, given all that's happened. So, it's a really interesting deep dive by Taliesin. Again, I encourage you to watch that video to get the fuller context of how this went down, what happened afterward. It's about a 20-minute video, but great insight there, and highly recommend that you check it out. And it gives a great explainer to why things that didn't make sense for a reason. On to another really great video is, we love Taron Gregory around here. Taron Gregory, I think, he can do wrong, but up to this point, he has done no wrong. And so with Burning Crusade Classic, they are now getting into Black Temple territory here. And so there was a video put out called Revisiting the Original Black Temple Trailer, Building Azeroth Burning Crusade Classic. And it has Taron Gregory essentially breaking down the original Black Temple trailer and talking about how they built that internally, how they had people just playing characters and they were filming things, how certain scenes were meant to represent either the passage of time or how a character was thinking about something. And it's incredible insight into something that I think we oftentimes just kind of passively watch and go, okay, that was cool. That's the raid. All right, let's jump in. Without really getting into the nitty gritty of why does a character do XYZ thing? Or who are these other people? Why are they there? What's the motivation? Or what's happening? With somebody like Taron, you get everything is such a love letter. And that's what I feel is so genuine about Taron Gregory and his place, and why I praise him so much is because he's one of us. He made this machinima that got him essentially into Blizzard all those years ago. And he has been kind of our man from the inside, creating these individual love letters. Every time there's one of these in-game cinematics or other works that he's worked on, you can feel there's something genuine there. And I trust him. Now, that's dangerous these days, considering all the things that have happened, but I trust him being there. And if he were to leave, I would have a major heart attack. I'm probably going to have one anyway, but I'm so happy to see him out front and center talking about these things, because I think he is a good representative for us, for the company, and it's always great to hear his insight into something that maybe we've forgotten about or something that we just kind of overlooked. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend you check it out. It is the Revisiting the Original Black Temple trailer with the one and only Taryn Gregory. Last but not least, this will be brief. I have my new Exploring Azeroth Kalimdor book, the much maligned Exploring Azeroth Kalimdor book, and I've just started to get into it. I will say it is a gorgeous book. The printing that they have, both on the cover and then everything inside, it's a beautiful book, just like the last one, Exploring Azeroth: The Eastern Kingdoms, was. But I do recognize that there are issues with the tenor, tone, and content of this book, and I'm getting through it. But there was significant concern around how certain characters were treated, how certain events unfolded, the way that Zakan is treated, and how there are stereotypical tropes, perhaps even racist tropes, if you want to read that far, play out in this book. And in some ways, what I have seen could very well be interpreted as insensitive. That being said, I am not the right person really to comment on that, because I'm just a fucking middle-aged white guy, straight white guy, and I don't have much of a lens on this, so I'm going to essentially trust folks that are represented by these cultures to weigh in as to whether or not these portions of the book are insensitive or not. If they say that they are, I am not one to argue with them. What I will say is that from my read of the book thus far, it flows with what I know. It's got great heart in it. It's got great information in it. It's fun to see certain places revisited. So my read of it initially has been I've enjoyed it, but also recognizing that there are challenges within, and it may very well reshape how Blizzard does projects like this in the future, and it probably should, because that's not the kind of issue that you need to have. You want to make sure that you have an inclusive environment for all involved, and these are the kinds of insensitivities that continue to be pervasive, and you really have to have a well-rounded team to take a look at a project like this around all angles and ensure that you don't fall into these types of tropes. So I haven't read it all the way through. So far it has been enjoyable, but again, recognizing that there are issues. If you want to check it out, it is out now, and you can be your own judge. All right. Well, that will do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you can always follow me and this show on Twitter at Berzerker Rage and Unshackled_Fury. You can also join our Discord, links for which are in the profile of the show on Twitter and on our Warcraft Radio page. Feel free to contact the show with your questions, comments, or otherwise through any of these resources or unshackledfury.com. And you can find this show wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for listening. Remember to keep your swords wet and your banners high. And we'll see you next time. Farewell.